Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is November 1, 2023. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast, I'm Probably Wrong About Everything. It's an honor and a pleasure indeed to be here today with Phineas Narco. Where in the heck you calling in from, Phineas?
I'm in San Jose, California, Silicon Valley,
How
the
cool is
heart,
that?
the heart of Silicon Valley.
How cool is that? The first question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
Well, music is the best. I'll have to steal that. For a human being, I can't make a blanket statement. I can only say for me. I would say to be alive probably is the best thing for a human being. Because if you're dead, there's no chance of it getting better. Uh, if you're alive, there's always a chance of it getting better. So that's number one. And for me, music is the best. I'll have to steal that from Frank. We have that in common, as you know. And
Okay, let's stop there for a second, Phineas. So, do you think we met from you calling the Zappa hotline?
well, see, that's what I wanted to ask you because I don't remember exactly. It's been so long. It was the early 90s, I think, when we met, wasn't it? Because it was the Zappa News Group on Usenet, I thought it was.
No, I
No,
never
it
did that.
wasn't. Oh, it wasn't? Well,
No, so you must have. Did you call the Zappa hotline?
it was something, it was something to do with Zappa. I know that.
Okay, we probably talked through that. So you quoted "Music is the best" from Frank Zappa. To
Yeah.
be alive is beautiful because that's what Louis Buñuel said. Long live the living.
Yeah.
What's your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
Probably digital. I mean, I I had to wait for this point in history to get this kind of access to media. I don't like direct experience that much. I don't go out that much because I can't, uh, I can't slide the volume lever and I can't turn it off. So I kind of prefer digital information.
Why do you think why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Well, I think it's because the same reason they create art, because they're trying to make sense out of the world and they're trying to make sense of themselves. And it's nice to have the artists to come along and sort of put it into some kind of an order. The way it is now, it's what George Carlin used to call the din. He may have laid that line on you at some point because I know you used to work for him. The din is just all the information coming at you. And so it's nice to have these collators, which is what I try to do, to put it in some kind of meaningful order. So I think
And
it's,
you're spelling din, D-I-N.
yes, that's what George used to call it.
How
The
cool is
kind of
that?
the barrage of
Yeah,
information we're subjected to.
sensory overload.
Yes, the barrage, yeah, the din.
Yeah. Why do you think well, you said why we collect it. Now, is this need or want to collect information more innate or more invented?
Well, I have to think back to the cavemen. They started writing on the wall. I mean, they started making these elaborate pictures on the walls for some reason. We don't know exactly why, but they were trying to capture the image of a elk or a deer or something. So I think it would go all the way back to that. So I think, at least as far as the humans are concerned, I'd have to go back to a poem by Kurt Vonnegut where he said, fish gotta swim, birds gotta fly, man's gotta sit and wonder why. And for that, he needs information. And so I would say for humans, it's innate.
Do thoughts create emotions?
Uh, it's sort of a chicken and the egg kind of thing because, you know, in a place where you find flowers, you usually find bees and vice versa. And so they kind of go hand in hand. I think sometimes emotions can create thoughts. Sometimes we feel something and then we have to figure out, a rationalization about why it is we feel that way.
Yeah, that's good. V Vale,
Yeah, right. Of research.
I said, do thoughts create emotions? And he goes, emotions create emotions.
Yeah,
Okay, fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I
I don't know what I think until I think it.
think it. Is thinking more innate or more invented?
I think it's got to be innate. I think we were doing that all the way back. I would like to think that.
Can humans think without language?
Yeah, I guess you could think in images. I don't think language is necessary necessarily. Filmmakers think a lot with images. Sometimes it's hard to put things into words, so you have to express it abstractly, maybe in a sculpture or something like that.
Yeah. Chomsky says a language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. Sounds like NCN to me. what do you do?
Yeah,
What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
uh, I guess you have to go to action in that case, or you have to go to something more abstract. Uh, I always thought Don Joyce of Negative Land, who passed away in 2015, he was kind of my mentor. And I always thought he struggled a bit. He was a writer, he was very good with language, but I thought he struggled a bit with in interviews. I always wanted to see him answer some of the questions with a booper with a booper solo, playing the booper. I think that would have been a good way to answer some of the questions he was
Wait,
asked.
what is a booper?
A booper is a it's a
Sound
an
effect?
electronic instrument that was created by the weatherman in a while back. The weatherman is a guy in Negative Land, and it just boops. It's kind of a electronic feedback machine, but he knows all the specifications of it. But it's something
It's
they use.
You mean it fills in? Like I would like to say to you, boop off. You mean it makes a little boop sound?
It makes a boop sound, but it can be stretched and it can be modified and
Right.
it can be it's a whole instrument that they do. I
It
hope I
sounds like what no, Andy Warhol. They were interviewing him once, and he says, what do you think the purpose of art is?" And he goes, "Can I just go blah, 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 blah?" And the interviewer goes, "Yeah." So he goes, blah, 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 blah.
I think Nirvana did that too. They said, "What is Nirvana about?" And he sang it, played a little ditty, or he did a little riff with his voice.
Yeah.
What
You
is
mean
the
not nonsensical kind of
yeah
noise.
yeah
Finneganese.
yeah.
Okay, Phineas, your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
This was yeah. I mean, I would say that the passions are. Personally, I think thinking is more the slave of the passions. I'm of
Oh,
that school of thoughts. I think that the passion is what is the base, is the foundation, and then the thinking will come in and modify that. But
well,
I think,
Bridget Bardot said, when I make love, I don't think. And I'm like, good luck. You're doing the most sensuous thing you can do with your body. And you shut your brain off? It's like people who meditate, they go, okay, think about not thinking.
yeah, yeah, it can be hard to stop thinking. Yes,
But it is amazing because see, it's me and you versus the wording on my questions. And when
right.
I'm open for that. I want words to be shifting and mutating and challenged. So when
Yes,
I say, are we more feeling or thinking? You took the word feeling and used passion. That's
yeah.
heavy substitution. I like that.
Yeah. Uh,
Okay,
there,
here's
there,
here's two questions from Alan
okay.
Turing, 1950s.
Okay.
Is thinking a function of the soul?
Is thinking a function of the soul? Uh, I think I want to say it burbles up from the soul, and then the thinking is kind of the switchboard that delineates where the thinking is going to go. So maybe the thinking is sort of like the switchboard with all the plugs in it, and the soul is the source. Calling in. If
Yeah,
that makes sense.
that makes a lot of sense. The second Turing question is, can machines think?
Well, I mean, it would depend on how you. Yeah, I think they can think. I don't think they can feel though. I don't think that they have heart. Uh, I it's my goal, especially in the realm of AI we're in now. It's my goal with my work that when you listen to it, you go, "This had to be a human who made this. This isn't a machine," because the way it's constructed is someone who has a soul, who has feeling, and I think that would be extremely difficult for a machine to replicate or to come up with on its own. It can simulate it, but I don't think that they have heart. I don't think that they have feeling. I think that's something that perhaps had to evolve over billions of years.
Another Turing quote I like is, what we want is a machine that can learn from experience. Now, I like you brought up that word direct experience earlier. And this is a funny quote. I'm not saying I agree or disagree, but it's Turing saying what we want. Is it what we want, a machine that can learn from experience? You think, is that what we want?
Well, it depends on what the outcome is because they were does it have something called common sense because they were trying to teach one of these AI programs to recognize skin cancer, and they were showing it all these photographs of skin cancer. Now that's its experience, is to see all these photographs of skin cancer. But it was identifying pictures that had the little ruler in it, and saying that the ruler has skin cancer. It's indicative of skin cancer. So its experience says that the little meter, the little ruler in the picture means you have skin cancer. So it's learning from its experience, but does it have common sense?
Yeah.
Does it have common sense to jiggle the knob on the door to get the door open, when the key isn't really working? That's one of the big problems with getting the robots to work right. Is they don't know how to jiggle the lock. Everybody knows to jiggle the lock, but they don't. So if the robots are coming for you, lock the door. They probably can't get in.
Yeah, I'm not a UFO guy so much, but that one major UFO guy, Billy, whatever, he used to take pictures of pie plates, throw them up in the air and shoot a picture. And then with his so-called real photos of UFOs, he would slip in the pie plate photos. And then when the press came to see, well, you got any photos? He'd give them all to them to see if they could tell the difference between a pie plate and a quote authentic UFO picture.
That reminds me of a scene in Close Encounters where he goes, "This is a picture of a UFO," and they're all saying, "That's the one I saw," and he says, "It's made of pewter, and it's it's made
Right.
in China, and it's a plate, and they go,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay, you fooled us."
You fooled us. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is uh, McLuhan saying everybody experiences far more than they understand. Yet it is experience rather than understanding that influences behavior. How I interpret that is the kid comes in from the cold and the parent goes, "Don't touch the stove, it'll burn your hand." That's experience. if they were wise, they would go, I'm going to teach you the dynamics of heat and understand that you can get close to the stove, rub your hands, and get your hands warm. So I'm curious how you interpret that. Do you think we learn and are more guided by experience, but we should be more guided by understanding?
I think that there's something in subgenius called thinking with the back of the brain, they call it.
Yeah,
And it's something that artists kind of do. And you're kind of getting into that area of the brain that is probably experienced something, but you're not consciously thinking of it. And the artist kind of does this a lot.
yeah,
Uh, if I can give you an example real quick, hopefully, years ago I woke up and it was before the alarm came on, and I was sort of thinking about this quote from Trent Reznor where he says, "We're all alone." And suddenly the radio comes on and it says, "We are not alone," or "You are not alone," it said, which is an amazing coincidence. But
yeah,
then if you think about it, this was set to a radio station where a lot of commercials are played, and it's coming on at the same time every day. So I may have been listening to "You Are Not Alone" every day that week, and that might have been what triggered the thought.
yeah.
So there could have been an understanding there subconsciously that triggered the thought "You are not alone," that led to that, idea of reference or coincidence. So the artist uses uh, coincidences, synchronicity like that, and there's no way to cause that to happen. But there's another part where it's not just you creating, it's you as an artist, you're not just creating, you're recognizing. So you're recognizing synchronicities and coincidences. Don Joyce called it cultivating coincidence, where you set up those type of things to make it more likely for those kind of things to happen, and then you recognize them, you incorporate them into your work.
Dude, you are brilliant, Phineas. That's amazing because you evoked, Zappa called it conceptual continuity. That you
Right,
can, it's pattern recognition. You study
right,
the patterns and you get the big picture, which is called comprehensive awareness.
right.
McLuhan called it complex clairvoyance. But what is the opposite of coincidence and synchronicity? What's the opposite of that?
Just chaos, I guess, random chaos. The mind, it gets back to that poem by Vonnegut about man's got to sit and wonder why. We're significance junkies. We want to look for patterns, and it can lead to illness. Where like the number 23, if you ever saw that movie with James Carrey, where he's seeing the number 23 everywhere. That's a coincidence, but it can lead you into madness. But if you sort of learn to ride the stallion that's in your head instead of having it trample you, which can take a long time, uh, you can utilize those synchronicities into your work. And in the course of doing work, some incredibly magical things happen. But after you get in like at least 10,000 hours working as an artist, uh, it it's almost like it's just kind of like part of the job. It's
Yeah.
magic is part of the job.
Yeah,
I can give you an example of this in the latest project if you want.
please.
I'm doing this project on Andrew Tate, and it's a long project, and it's actually a piece that's up now on my Mixcloud called The Wizard, and it's based on largely a thing that BBC did. He's got a person in his enclave that's called the Wizard. And so I'm putting this thing together, and part of the documentary that it's based on, this interviewer confronts this guy in Andrew Tate's crew called the Wizard, follows him around Koreatown, which is in SoCal. And the Wizard guy, he's asking him all these questions, and the guy is just wandering around saying nothing, walks all over, saying nothing. Now I go, there's got to be a song called The Wizard, and it's got to be about the Wizard. And the somewhere that Yes is done or King Crimson, some kind of prog rock thing. So I look up online and there's a song by Black Sabbath. I've never heard of it. It's something you can look up. It's called The Wizard, and it's about a guy literally walking around never saying anything, just like this guy in the documentary, like perfect fit. And this kind of thing is so part of the job that you just kind of like you almost just don't notice it.
Yeah.
Just happens, you know. But it takes a while to get there. If you're just starting out, you have to work up to that point.
Yeah, you go, you're training observational skills,
Right,
your pattern recognizer, and you don't let
right,
it freak you out. You
right,
integrate it. It's like go with the flow. But
right.
you know, did you know the day that the film 23 came out, Robert Anton Wilson died?
Oh wow. Was it on a 23 date? Was it
No,
on?
no,
Okay.
I don't know about that, but the day the film came out, Robert died, and 23 was his number.
I'll give you another one. One of the times we met was in the 90s. You and I, remember what you said to me? It was the week of the Rodney King riots. And you said to me, Wednesday I saw the riots. I seen the cops out on the street because it started on a Wednesday, and we both knew that.
Yeah.
You know what else started on a Wednesday?
What?
January 6th.
Oh yeah. Wow. That's right.
So which one are we forgetting now? Which civil unrest event
Yeah.
are we not
Yeah.
including?
You could find more worldwide, and yeah, that's like you part of the zeitgeist. That's Martha Graham said great artists aren't ahead of their times. They are their times.
Yeah, yeah,
You know. But that was good. Yeah. So you mean we met in person before?
yeah. I went to your Pixel Vision event
Festival
that was in
in
San
SF
Fran. Yes, in
at
fact, I learned that one of the Pixel Visions, famous Pixel Visions, was sort of adapted into a movie called Bob Roberts, as you probably know, that one with
yeah.
the fanatical Jesus followers.
Did you go to other cinema to see it or down here?
Yeah, it was other cinema. It was
Yeah.
other cinema. Craig Baldwin's place.
That's the only time we ever met in person.
There was a time before that, I think, in the '90s, when I think you referenced the Rodney King riots. It was the week of the Rodney King riots.
But that was also in person in San Francisco?
It was in person, but I don't know if it was in San Francisco, somewhere.
Oh. You could have
Yeah.
been down here, you mean?
No, I don't think so. No.
Okay. Okay, so now we got the next question is um do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Uh, I think I pursue meaning, but for me, meaning is happiness.
Yeah.
you know, there's three things that sort of make art meaningful to me. There's three boxes, and Frank kind of referenced them in that. I want to call it a hierarchy, but maybe it's not a hierarchy. That ends with music is the best, and the three boxes that are checked off, or that you generally checking off, are beauty, goodness, and truth. And there's a fourth one in there that's optional, which is humor,
Yeah.
which you can do. So you'll find yourself as an artist getting one or two or three of those boxes. If you can get all three of them, and even all four of them, you probably want that as your closer. But
Yeah.
you know, uh, I find that's the infusion of those qualities into work or into anything to be meaningful, and I get my happiness from doing that, from getting that.
Yeah, I
But
got
good,
go ahead.
but goodness, truth, and beauty, like Frank was pointing out in that run up, in that quote, they don't necessarily imply each other. They're different realms. You can have something that's true that's not beautiful. You can have something good that's not
Yeah.
true. You know, so they're
Yeah,
separate boxes.
we're gonna get it. That was good. That's I call that Frank's manifesto. It's from Packard Goose.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's the information is not so that the information manifesto. So that was good. Music is the best way to refer to that
that
manifesto.
was his slack. You know,
Yeah.
when he was a kid, it was his slack was eating good chili at the cafe and listening to 3 hours past midnight on the jukebox, and it became his work. It became
Yeah.
his music. You know?
Yeah, that's Johnny Guitar Watson, really good.
Yeah,
Ice pick in the forehead. Or no,
right.
that's Guitar Slim. Anyways, this is good because there was two things there. I got the question from Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, and he says, meaning tends to last, happiness doesn't necessarily last. And it's funny how this never happened before. I dropped that experience versus understanding question. And I was about to say, T.S. Eliot said, I had the experience but missed the meaning. So that's funny because I was quite impressed that you said, your favorite form of information isn't necessarily direct experience. That's what
Right.
most people say, like, well, direct experience, live conversation. And it's like, well, there's other ways you can get information and you can have an experience but miss the meaning, or you can have experience and, you know, have meaning or attain meaning. So this goes along with it, Phineas, and thank you. This is really fun. I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Uh, does the brain more detect consciousness or create consciousness? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
I always think of consciousness. I always think of it as kind of like the awareness of being aware. So there's kind of this meta awareness that's going on.
Yeah.
That's just my definition. I don't know how that stacks up. There's other people who are experts on consciousness.
But do you think that we're creating that consciousness or are we detecting it?
That stumps me. I don't know. I have to come back to that.
That's
We
all right.
we, we may be creating it by detecting it.
Yeah,
I want to say that
that's good.
there's a point there where a friend of mine said he became conscious when he was as a child was left outside in his stroller and suddenly realized he was an actual entity that could be harmed, and that's
Yeah,
when he became conscious, so
yeah,
sort of like being aware that you're a consciousness.
yeah,
So it may be the second one, maybe what I just said, whatever I just said.
yeah.
I have to go back and look.
Well, what's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Oh, well, that I don't know. I don't know. I think it might have. I think that it must be the speed of light because if you're talking about speed of thought, we're talking about synapses, we're talking about electricity in the brain supposedly, and I would think that's got to be slower than light. The people who got zapped in that ocean sub, apparently didn't know what hit them because the synapses don't conduct electricity that fast. So their thoughts didn't know what hit them. So I would have to go with light on that.
Okay.
If you're talking about biology, thought as biology.
Audre Lorde, the poet, said, you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rainer responded, said, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
Say it once more. What's the last part? Last part.
The question is basically what tool do you gravitate towards? You can apply the word new if you want. And it's and when I say these cute quotes before the question, it doesn't mean you have to apply it. You put it into the context you want.
I would say it's the tools we're using right now because it's the tools of the internet. It's
Yeah.
the tool. It's the tools. I don't know much about communism. I went to the school of Monty Python's Flying Circus as a kid, and so I know that he was on about you know his main thing was that the tools have to be in the hands of the proletariat. You know that the tools in the hands of the workers.
Yeah.
And so we're the workers, we're the consumers, and these are the tools that we're
Yeah.
using right now. And
Yeah.
so I would say this is it, you know.
Yeah.
And so, but the bad part is it's a double-edged sword because everybody has the tools, and you get the tools are also in the hands of ne'er do wells and grifters like, well, I could name some names, but we all know
Yeah.
who they are.
Exactly.
So
So what
so
yeah. No, that
yeah
was good, Phineas. What
yeah.
new toy do you suggest?
To do what? Destroy the master.
No, not necessarily. Well, however you want to apply it. It was funny because when I asked someone a few months ago what new tool do they suggest, and they go, "Well, I could tell you a toy." And I thought, well, now I'll start asking people after what toy they like, what tool do they gravitate towards? What new toy do you like?
The new toy that I like is the AI, you know, because there's this. I want to do this. Everybody's kind of freaking out about AI. Every time I go back to it, like I'm subscribed to this toy now, where it's like you type in stuff and it'll say it in the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi, or it'll say it in the voice of Trump. And every time I go back to this toy, it gets more realistic to the
Yeah,
point where you're going, this, I just typed this in and it's saying this new text, but I swear to God, this sounds like a human being is doing this.
yeah,
And it just keeps getting better and better.
yeah,
So I'm having fun with that toy because now I'm like, I want to re envision some scenes from Star Wars, like where he's talking about you know, a certain point of view. You
yeah,
know, Luke, when I said Darth Vader killed your father, that was true from a certain point of view. What point of view is that, Ben? The view from up your ass? You know, I want to, I want to kind of reimagine some of these. And then I got like, you know, Trump in there. It's on my YouTube now. Trump in there as Kurtz
yeah.
from Apocalypse Now.
I noticed that. Yeah,
And so that's a fun toy. I think it's we want to we I don't want to use it to fool people. I want it to be obvious that it's fake, you know, in a sense, but it should be also realistic. Frank
yeah,
had a good line about there needing to be a frame around art, or else it's all just a bunch of crap on the wall, you
yeah.
know. So,
That's good. And so, what do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
uh, I worry about if I've got the door locked because I'm downtown. I worry about a little bit about the homeless people on the street. It's a little bit ironic because they're probably fast asleep there, and you know, I'm a little bit worried about them. I don't really go out that much because I get a little kind of rather bummed out, you know, by the tragedy, the tragics, tragic people and situations. That's one of the reasons, and so I worry about stuff like that, and I worry a little bit about you know the future, climate change, when those chickens are going to come home to roost, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound that artists are the antenna of the race. You sort of touched on this, the role and motive of the artist early on. So I appreciate that. He said basically artists are detecting and broadcasting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions so we might learn to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So, Phineas, I asked you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
Uh, well, I think it goes back to the frame.
Yeah,
Uh, it's easier to deal with when it's in a frame.
yeah,
Everybody kind of wanted to know what was going on in that sub that imploded.
yeah,
They didn't want to be in the sub,
right.
but they wanted to kind of know what that was, what happened. And I think that if you extend that to the world, uh, there's a desire to know what's really going on in the dark side of the world, but they people don't necessarily want to get it on them. And so in the realm of art, there's the frame, there's the proscenium arch or the velvet rope that separates the consumer of the art from the art itself, and so then it's a little bit more consumable, a little bit more palatable, and you're learning stuff about the world. Before in the 70s, before Jaws and before Star Wars and before movies sort of became entertainment, there was a lot of movies like Soylent Green and Rollerball and Deer Hunter and Taxi Driver that had very downbeat endings. And you kind of went to the movies to get bummed out before Jaws, before they decided they could make millions of dollars with feel good movies. But you let them bum you out because you became more social conscious about the world. You were being taught, back then they called it the greenhouse effect. You were being taught about the world, and people found that valuable. They paid money to get a ticket to go to the movies to kind of get bummed out until that became unfashionable. But that will always be part of art, to kind of like explore dark things within that frame about the world, to find out more about the world. Because there is darkness out there. I don't have any particular paranoid feelings about what's going on, who exactly is pulling the strings. I just assume at any given time there's just an inordinate amount of evil going on in the world, you know, at least on the human level, in a both systemic and personal level. But try to figure out why it's happening or who's doing it is ridiculous. I don't really understand the motivation to want to know that, and to know it is kind of like to spoil the game anyway, because it kind of takes all the fun out of it. But it is kind of fun to at least to consider some of the conspiracy theories that are out there. I don't really believe them because it's ridiculous. I mean, you're talking about unknowables ultimately.
Yeah, it's like the
But
greatest,
you
the
but you can
greatest,
make art out of them.
yeah, the greatest conspiracy theory is that Kubrick shot the moon landing footage because he needed the lens for Barry Lyndon, and the government had the only lens. And so they go, yeah, we'll give you the lens if you shoot it. I don't care if that's true or not. It just to think that up is brilliant.
And then there's all these Easter eggs in The Shining that
Oh,
point
yeah.
to it as well. So it's
Why?
fun. It's
Yeah.
fun, but but it's like Robert Anton Wilson was saying. Belief should be on a dimmer switch. It's not an on off. A lot of the people on the right, of the political right, they see the world and they see belief as kind of an on off switch.
Yeah.
And the people on the left, it's a different kind of thinking. They think more in terms of spectrum and a dimmer switch, and their belief is more on a scale. Personally, I think if you believe anything 100%, you should just say that you know it. It
Yeah.
becomes knowledge at that point.
Oh, we're going to get into that. That's amazing thing you just talked about. But before we do, there's a couple things. What you said to me now really enlightened me because I've been studying this project for years, and I haven't written it up yet, but I want to, is how James Joyce ruined cinema. And boy, did it needed to be ruined. And
When
it's
did that happen?
well, it's basically if you read Christopher Vogler's book, The Writer's Journey, he took Joseph Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces and showed how, Star Wars came out of that. And
Right.
basically that Campbell came out of Finnegan's Wake. And
Oh,
Vogler said, anyways, I'll send you the exact quote in
yeah.
the second edition of his book, how then Hollywood changed from being it changed into a teenage boy medium. That's what Jaws and Star Wars
Right.
turned it into kids. And so not to
That
go
those were sort of the Frampton Comes Alive of movies, right? That
that's a
was
friend that
yeah,
comes alive.
yeah,
That's totally it.
yeah.
I'm in you. Okay, so I don't want to go into that, but you enlighten me, and I'm going to review Frampton Comes Alive. That is funny. Okay, so but now here's the other flip: is if you take the McLuhan-esque um, reading of Wizard of Oz and change it to Wizard of Us, then
Okay.
what did Dorothy was supposed to go get the broom, the witch's
Right.
broom, which represents skywriting, which is advertising, create the
Right.
disease and offer the cure. And
Right.
so she takes the broom to the wizard, and what
Right.
happens? But the dog
The
pulls
dog.
the curtain
That's
back
right.
and
Toto.
reveals what's the behind the scenes, like you're saying, the spectrum dimmer switch or the velvet rope you got behind that. And that's what the artist is the atomic dog. He's the artists are pulling the curtain back to reveal what's happening, that
Yeah.
the hidden psychic effects. But
Yeah.
here's the question, Phineas: do artists have moral obligation?
I think, yeah, it's that checkbox you want to get in there now. Your North Star should be goodness, I think. That should be the compass where you're heading. Now, on the way there to the goodness at the end of the rainbow, so to speak, you can get dark, and the journey can be harrowing. Dorothy went through the dark forest, and there's some scary parts of that. In the end, she returned home, which I have to agree with John Waters because I'm not sure why she did. She had these great shoes, and you know, so she
but
just,
but wait, you said you agree with John Waters?
yeah, he was saying he didn't really understand why Dorothy wanted to go back to Kansas because she was all set up in Oz.
Well,
She had,
that's funny because I've used John Waters. I've got to study his whole thing on Wizard of Oz more because I heard him say once, I rooted for the Wicked Witch. Like, how many people rooted for the Wicked Witch? That seems rare. And I mean, he turned out okay. I mean, he made some sick films, but he's
she was perhaps the most colorful character in some ways. I mean, very campy.
you mean the Wicked Witch?
The Wicked Witch of the
Yeah.
West. Is that the one
Yeah.
we're talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
You mean
yeah.
that's why he maybe rooted for her.
Probably for that performance. Yeah,
Yeah. But I'm saying he rooted for her. There's two things. The
yeah,
character that's intriguing you and how they have her portrayed, but then it's sort of like I rooted for wickedness. Like
yeah.
you're rooting for goodness. Do you root for wickedness?
Perhaps in the short run, and in the long run, I'd like to see it wind up at a higher place, unless you're expressing a state of mind or an observation that is just a big bum out, and there's a place for that. There's a place to go. This situation is hopeless. This thing I'm describing is hopeless, and I'm conveying my feelings of hopelessness about the situation. Uh, Spielberg made Schindler's List, and he tagged on kind of this uplifting ending. Well, I mean, it's not really that. I mean, only Spielberg can do that. But it's not a very uplifting subject matter. I think it's okay to make art that ends darkly because that that might be how you that's how you feel about it. You feel about something in a sort of a closed door way. It's kind of like, this bums me out. I feel bad about this. I want to commiserate with my audience about how bad I feel about this. There's a place for that kind of art, but I think ideally it's nice to have it arrive at a good ending. But even saying that something's bad can be good too, because you're saying to the audience, I feel bad about this too. You are not alone. And that in itself can be good.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there. You said a lot because when you said feel good movies, I really got grounded with your whole presence here because I've that's what I was raised on, like Frank Capra, feel good movies. It's a
Yeah,
Wonderful Life.
yeah,
And then I went through that heavy 70s stage in college and showing Taxi Driver and Bonnie
right,
and Clyde and all that. And it's
right,
like
right.
I immediately turned off after that. I says, I don't want to watch blood and guts and arms being cut off. I don't need your Turk, what's his name? Uh,
Tarantino.
well, no, never wanted Tarantino, never even gave him a chance. Only watched one film by him and closed my eyes during certain scenes. But no, the guy who chops limbs off, Tarkovsky. No, not Tarkovsky, the other Jodorowsky, you know,
Oh, okay. The
you know,
guy he was gonna direct Dune.
yeah,
Yeah.
Jodorowsky's biggest famous film is, chopping off hands. And then the guy in Canada, the Canadian David Lynch, he's a great filmmaker, but Guy Madden. But I don't need people's fingers chopped off in films. But
Well, yeah,
big exception, I can take on Sean Andalou. So there's a big paradox going on in my film consumption. But what you said was just saying feel good films. So it's like, why do we go to art? Why do we go to cinema? We're going to get into that. But first, I want to go into this word truth that you brought up
right,
because Louis Buñuel says, I'm for anyone who seeks the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it. What do you think of
right.
that?
Yeah, that's why I have this icon on my Facebook of Mobius with the blue and the red pill. If you look on my Facebook, he's got
Yeah,
this blue and the red pill, but he's got it like this, He's shrugging,
yeah,
because he doesn't know. He's like, "What the fuck?"
yeah,
And so that appeals to me because if anybody offers you the red pill of truth, it's like run. They
yeah,
don't have it. There's no factory somewhere manufacturing red pills of truth. No one has the truth. No, I mean
yeah,
it's fine. Like freedom, like equality, like a lot of ideals like that, like peace itself. It
yeah.
can't be realized in life in an absolute sense. Frank has that song, absolutely free.
Absolutely free is
But
amazing.
it's something to aspire to,
It's
but you
right.
can't actually get it.
Yeah, but I'm for anyone who seeks the truth. That's the
Right,
first part of the Buñuel. But I part
right,
ways when they claim they found it. Now,
right. I agree
Phineas,
with that.
yeah, well, 90%, 99% of people go, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah,
One guy finally said that's bullshit because if I'm going to seek something, it's because I want to find it. And so Louis, maybe talking satirical, maybe he's talking tongue in cheek, and he did that a lot, or your words, cynic. He's sort of maybe being a little cynical, twisty, but the guy I morphed that to a question is if the journey is more important than the destination, Why do we have to name or seek a destination?
Because it defines where we're going. It's the North Star. We're never going to reach the North Star, but that defines where we're headed. No one is going to reach it, but it defines the nature of the journey. Uh, if you read a book by Stephen King, it's full of horror, it's full of monsters and so on, but you sense there's a goodness in the storyteller. He's got his North Star in place. He's not some depraved guy just telling stories about, horrors, chaotically. There's a goodness there, and I think that matters in art.
But the people who changed the world forever were sitting in Paris in the 20s, like
Mhm.
Joyce and Duchamp, and they were flaneurs. It's called psychogeography. They just wandered aimlessly and had epiphanies in everydayness. So you don't necessarily have to have that focus, but everybody probably does, whether they know it or not. It might be hard grainedness, but it goes on to our discussion of this word truth, which you
Right.
brought up. This is Shelby Foote, the saying, a fact is not a truth until you love it. And I'm curious your thoughts on that line.
Well, it's yeah. I mean, it's there's these yeah. It gets to the idea of we we take on these facts as truths because they're facts that resonate with our own value systems, our own personalities. You see whole swaths of this country now that are kind of operating on alternative facts. They're kind of like embracing an alternate reality right now. A lot of them really don't even think that the President of the United States is the President of the United States. That's a fact to them that they love, and it resonates with what they want to believe, and so that's their truth. But it's getting to the point now where I'm thinking like eventually we're just going to accept some people as living in their own specific reality. Like this is Tom. He believes he's a Martian. He lives on Mars. It's getting to an extreme point right now. Kind of, I'm
Well,
concerned about it.
yeah, we should be. And it's
And it's kind of being fueled, that break, I think, to a large degree. It's being fueled by the tool that we're using now, which is social media,
yeah,
because the algorithms are kind of putting people into silos now, information wise, and giving them the truths that they love
yeah.
or that they gravitate to. And so now they're like, okay, so now they're kind of, at what point do we just say they're being driven insane? They're not, they've broken from consensus reality.
Well, that's Igor Stravinsky said most people don't know what they like what they know. So if
Yeah.
you look through these tunnel vision, uh, so this is Eartha Kitt. Truth is a theory that is constantly being disproved. Only lies, it seems, go on forever. What do you think of that one?
That's juicy. I have to think that. Yeah. Yeah. That's,
Well, this is Marcel Proust's question. On what
yeah.
occasion do you lie?
What occasion do I lie? I think it's like, I think that if you are being harassed by a creep if a woman is being harassed by a creep at a bus stop at 3 o'clock in the morning, she can tell the creep, my boyfriend's going to be here in 5 minutes. If that gets him to go away, that's a good lie.
Yeah,
Uh, so it's there are some times when a lie is good. Anne Frank is not here is a good lie. I
yeah.
mean, it's so we can't be completely hardline about that sort of thing. I think you can lie when the intention behind it is good and the outcome is hopefully good, you know, or just simply neutral, innocuous. But
That's
otherwise,
Tom Waits. On what occasion do you lie? He says, I didn't know I needed an occasion. Okay, two more. Here's Schopenhauer. All truth passes through three stages. First, first it's ridiculed. Second, it's violently opposed. Third, it's accepted as being self-evident. I knew that all along.
yeah, yeah,
But that
yeah,
is interesting how it morphs. First, it's ridiculed. I mean, that Schopenhauer nailed it, didn't he? Then it's
yeah,
opposed. Then it's saying, I knew it all along.
yeah, yeah. I think that's you see those stages of grief politically too.
Yeah.
Now you see Trump kind of going, well, you know, if I have to go to jail, I'm ready to go to jail. It's like now we're kind of like at the acceptance stage, I
Well,
think, in the
that's
whole
my
country.
big line. I'll ask you. If Trump goes to jail,
Yeah,
writes a book and says I'm sorry, will you forgive him?
I don't think he'll ever say he's sorry. I think
No, but I'm not saying that. I'm saying, will you forgive him if he says he's sorry?
I would have to read the book, you know, because I just I think everything that guy does, there's an ulterior motive in it. So I really have to take that on a catch as catch can basis.
You know
I,
the great one. He used to take Madonna out, and he said,
who?
Trump
Frank?
used to
Oh,
Trump
Trump?
took Trump took Madonna out and says we're going and getting our picture taken for the New York Post, and show they would go to some opening and they'd get the picture and then he'd go home and eat hamburgers and watch TV and she'd go, "Hey, aren't you going to stay for the whole fucking date?"
Oh God. He dated Madonna?
I don't know if it was a date, it was just a photo op eternity, but I read that somewhere. Whether it's true or not, I probably read it in the New York Post. Who knows?
Speaking of John Waters, look up Divine giving Trump the stink eye back in
Oh,
back in the 80s. You know, it's like Divine knew. You know, she knew back then.
that's good. But I needed that one. Divine gave Trump stink eye.
Look up that picture on Google because it's hilarious.
Yeah. Well, that's where anyways, divine. That's amazing. I wondered, is the evil eye, stink eye, is that origin the one of my heroes growing up, you might know him as the Bowery Boys.
Hmm,
Did you ever see their thing about evil eye?
no.
Check it out. I'm curious. Okay, one more truth thing, Phineas.
Yeah.
Robert Evans, the pretty boy actor, become a film producer.
Now I've heard that name in the past 24 hours. Has he been in the news?
No, but there's a doc about him, and I think it opens with this quote. There are three sides to every story: my side, your side, and the truth, and no one is lying.
Uh, yeah. I mean, it could be like the elephant. You know, when the person says it's a tree trunk, and the person says it's a snake. You know,
Yeah.
everybody's got a little bit of it. It could be like that. Different perspectives.
Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Uh, I'm kind of wary of old ideas kind of coming around again, and you know, it's kind of like when in the '80s when I started getting involved in Subgenius, I was sort of like taking up arms against this notion of normalcy, which
Yeah.
is an old idea. And back then it was like, you know, we must fight against this tyranny of normalcy that they're laying on us. And now I'm like, oh my God, we really need normalcy. You know, we really what it's like there's this So I'm wary of things becoming coming full circle and then having this other kind of flip side quality to them like that.
Like the snake eating its tail. It's like,
Yeah.
did you read the full page article on Devo in the New York Times Sunday couple weeks ago? And basically Mark admits he was sneaking subliminal messages in his Disney and TV commercial soundtracks that said like buy Devo records, and then he says, and then I got caught. It's like, dude, you became what you hated, you know. You fucking do fucking stupid movie soundtracks and shit. And they did their 50th anniversary. I like some of their songs. Although I took my friend to see Devo once in Detroit, and he said I felt like I was at a Hitler rally.
Well, that's the only kind of subliminal message that makes sense because Frank was involved in that whole hysteria, that whole what do they call that, mass hysteria, that
Yeah,
panic about backward maskings.
yeah.
And I think Judas Priest said, "Why would we tell our fans to kill themselves? Then they won't buy our records." You know, which was the perfect answer to that.
Yeah, yeah. So
It's not like the Bible that tells you to pull your own eye out,
oh,
explicitly, which a lot of people have done, by the way. I mean, the people who wrote that have got nothing on, Judas Priest. They didn't
that's
even they didn't even write it in backwards.
so can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
The earliest memory, I think it was the earliest memory of socialization I had was like not being allowed in someone's house. I was really young. This was like probably under age 6. I wasn't being allowed in someone's house because the adult thought I was acting weird.
Wow.
I was acting weird, and so they just wouldn't allow me in their house on the basis of that. The other the other thing I remember is my mom telling me not to touch the iron that she was ironing the clothes with because I would burn myself, and then I immediately touched the iron, which is an impulse control thing. And I think in retrospect, I was kind of being set up because if you got a kid with impulse control problems who's hyperactive, you just put it out of their reach. You don't tell them not to do it. But I remember that at the time because I just couldn't fathom going the rest of my life not knowing what it felt like to get burned.
Yeah.
I just couldn't fathom not knowing what that was like. I found out, but my sister says she can still remember my hands sizzling, sound of
Wow.
my hands sizzling.
Wow. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
It's sort of a blurs. I'd call it a blurs.
A blurs.
Sometimes I think, if I get old and I start losing my memory, I think, well, that could be nice in some ways. There's some things
Yeah.
I don't know what's worse in old age, not being able to forget or not being able to remember. And it's sort of like, well, it depends on what you're talking about.
Well, tell me someone within your immediate family, then outside your immediate family, just briefly, who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model, and what specifically was that impact?
Well, outside the family, I would say Don Joyce of Negative Land had a big impact on me artistically because he passed away in 2015. I think it was July 22nd, 2015. And he taught me 3 things, which I call the threefold path of Don. Because in 1998, I was having like a midlife crisis, and I called him up on the phone for support, and he was very nice to give it to me because he didn't want to deal with my problems. He wanted to do his show. But he told me at the time the first thing, which was give up, which is something that you usually don't tell people when they're in crisis. But it's a sample from Negative Land fans will recognize that sample. And so I thought, okay, well that got my attention, and then I had to go back to him like, yes, master, but what if what do you mean by give up exactly? Do you mean lay down and die? And he said, no, give up everything that's driving you crazy that you think you have to do. And then whatever is left is what you want, that's what you should do. That's what you want to do. So I sat with that for a while. And then I came back and it was, but master, kind of moment. What if there's nothing left? What if there's just the void? And he said, well, that just leaves the horizon clear and free for the thing that you want to do to come along. And this was kind of right before I started NCN, as a matter of fact. And that, and also George Carlin, I had a correspondence with George Carlin around the same time. And you can find that recording that of his voicemail back to me online. George was very enthusiastic about the recording of the show that I sent to him. Just thought it was wonderful and wanted to meet me. And so it was the enthusiasm of George Carlin, which was like the purest gold to me, because you knew him, Jerry. He was a no bullshit guy.
Totally.
And so he wasn't going to say it was good if he didn't think so. And he really thought it was good. And you can hear it in his voice, in that voicemail. And so it was that enthusiasm for what I was doing. Every artist kind of wants to know when they're starting out if they're on the right track, if what they're doing is any good. And he gave that to me at the time as a kind of an artistic capital. And the work was going to change. It was going to morph into other things, but it stayed kind of that baseline kind of collage, artistic thing, over the edge, radio show Don Joyce type of stuff that I did as that show. But those two people had a tremendous influence on my work and my development. There's a thing, Chuck Palahniuk, who wrote Fight Club, talks about the second father that you find, that it's harder to find now. The mentor you find, like in the story Fight Club, it was Tyler Durden for a lot of the adherents. And Don Joyce was that. There's sort of like the biological father and the logical father. And Don Joyce was sort of the latter for me. And I'll tell you the other two principles of his threefold path if we want to get into that.
I do. I was just gonna. You have ESP. I was just gonna say, what are the other two of the Don Joyce, please?
Well, the second one is also a sample of. Now he didn't characterize it as the threefold path of Don, but I came to think of it as this way. The second principle was when I started to get sort of secretly famous, let's say, and I started to get some press, some major newspapers were covering what I was doing, and getting some good critical response. He was saying to me, nobody cares. That was the second thing, nobody cares, which is from you to Negative Land. Casey Kasem says it. Now, like give up, nobody cares sounds like a negative statement, but it's actually a very positive, empowering statement, because it frees you if you look at it in that way. If you're a teenager and you're kind of emo and writing poems about the moon and stuff, you can say, nobody cares, and that's kind of, the way you bemoan your fate. But if you're an adult, if you're like in your 30s and you got some things going on, and maybe you're kind of anxious about what people think about you, it can be a good thing to hear. And so he meant it in the adult sense.
Yeah.
It's like, oh wow, nobody cares. I can move freely about the cabin. It's cool.
It's cool. Let me stop you there for a second, Phineas, just to react to that.
Yeah.
It reminds me of this line I use by David Lee Roth all the time. here today, gone later today. It's like big deal. So what? You're fucking famous for a second. You know, it even like I'm studying Woody Allen films right now. He made
Yeah,
50 films in 50 years. He's a brilliant filmmaker. Even
yeah,
when he makes a shitty film, they're way better than the normal shit. Nobody cares. They just go,
yeah.
oh, he did something wrong. And now my friend can't really, he doesn't want to teach him in his film class because the students will turn him in and go, I have Mr. Teacher's teaching us Woody Allen. It's like, give me a break. So,
It's a good line to remember as an artist eventually because you get kind of hung up a lot of time on what other people think,
yeah,
and that can bog you down. Frampton Comes Alive. Frampton got bogged down. There was no follow up to Frampton Comes Alive because he's like, oh, what's my next hit going to be?
yeah,
I got to top that.
yeah.
Nobody
It's,
cares.
John Cage nailed it. He says, it doesn't matter what the press says about you, it's how thick your press kit is. And my friend put out this book, it's like 2 inches thick. I didn't say this to him. I was like, dude, this is just your press kit. This isn't a fucking book, you know.
I kind of look on it like I kind of like being secretly famous, because everything that I'm doing in my art is not going to make as big of a mainstream splash as
Yeah,
like Jesse's Girl by Rick Springfield. Remember that song? Like it's never going to get to that level. So I don't care. It's
right.
like I'm not even playing in that pond. I'm
Yeah,
commenting on that pond. And I'm
yeah,
glad I'm not Rick Springfield because he all he does is play trade shows now and show off his butt. He was
yeah.
in
Oh,
he knocked an audience member down with his own butt, and so now he's on YouTube in a court deposition giving testimony about his butt. You know, so he had his one hit wonder, but I'm still going. I think I win.
yeah, you
But
win definitely. That's it. So,
but
so these are great. Give up everything. Nobody fame,
well,
nobody.
give up the things that are
No,
driving you crazy.
yeah, I mean, I'm just saying them out loud to review. I know they're
Yeah,
deeper. Give
yeah.
up, nobody cares. What's the third, Don?
The third one is you're going to fail.
Oh yeah,
You're going to fail, and there's going to probably be someone laughing at you. Now,
yeah,
this is something that like someone like Trump just can't accept,
yeah,
even when he is failing,
yeah,
and we see the results of that. If you can just accept the fact that whatever you're doing in life, whatever artistic thing, whatever you're up to, eventually you're just going to fail.
yeah.
Then then you're free. You can groove.
Yep.
And so again, it sounds negative to say it,
No, it's not.
but it's not. It's
I'll give
empowering.
I'll give you two good examples. Frank Zappa said, "I'm a failure, but I'm not a miserable failure." I mean, that is just brilliant. But our friend
Yeah,
Jeff Machowski, who's come to our group for years, he was Stephen Colbert's teacher in Chicago for comedy improv.
yeah,
And Stephen, several years ago, was interviewed like in GQ or some highbrow magazine, and he says the best lesson I ever learned was from Jeff Machowski. Is like you're gonna fail, and it's actually a McLuhan line: turn your breakdown into a breakthrough. Just flip.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so that's really good examples. But I asked for 90 minutes, Phineas, and we got 15 more minutes. So
Okay,
I
sure.
just wanted to tell you, um, we can go a little longer if you want
Okay,
to,
yeah, definitely.
but I also want to say let's do a part two down the
Sure,
line, like in February and March or April, because
definitely.
we've only gotten through a few. Okay, so about the question, what about your immediate family? You really explained well outside your immediate family. Who inside your immediate family had an impact on you, and what was that impact?
Well, I wanted to talk about my father. Now, he died last year, and he and I were not close. I mean, I know there's this kind of cultural expectation that you're supposed to be close to your parents and your father and so on, and a lot of people aren't. And I think that's okay, you you've got some DNA in common with them. There may not be much else. So you seek out a mentor, you seek out a second father. And so we worked that all out. That was okay ultimately. Uh, a lot of people wonder why I'm so obsessed with Trump. And I think that a big reason about that is that, and I haven't really made this public before, but my father and his father were people who grew up in Italy, northern Italy, and they grew up in World War II, and they were in the thick of it. They were in the what I've heard a third party has described as the worst of it. They were in the Aleppo of their day, and so that trauma that he went through in that time filtered down to me. I think both in a genetic sense because there's a scientific. They've been finding out scientifically that affects you genetically. It affects the uh, the offspring even before they're conceived. And also there was the trauma of the violence of that era filtered down to the mental condition that I have without going into a lot of diagnostic criteria, which ultimately the artistic work came out of as a positive thing to kind of deal with as a kind of lemons into lemonade kind of process we talked about. Now, the reason it kind of gets into Trump a bit is because my father and his father were very kind of involved at the time with Mussolini to the extent where my father was swept up in the Mussolini Youth, which was an institution that was they were trying to get going at the time. They came and got him. It wasn't up to him whether he was part of that or not. They taught him to worship Mussolini. They taught him to worship Italy and Italians, something that stuck with him to the day he died. And his father, on my paternal side, and I had this confirmed by other family members, he was actually he worked as a barber, and he was actually the personal barber to the heir apparent to Mussolini, whose name was Italo Balbo, and he was I guess you could call him the Mike Pence of his day. And the thing about being a barber, this guy had very specific facial hair. If you look at his photographs, he had like a goatee that was very specific. He needed a personal barber, and the thing is, not just anybody could do that job. He couldn't go to any barber because of the fact that this was a job of someone holding a razor sharp blade up to his throat on a daily basis. And so the fascists at the time needed someone who was trustworthy. They needed someone who resonated with their philosophy, with their worldview, which was a bully worldview, a sadistic bully worldview. And that's what we got with Trump. They're trying to set it up again.
Yeah.
And that's why I oppose it, because I felt the pain of that worldview, as many people have done from that conflict. And I don't want to see it happen again. So when I come out against fascism and I come out against this crap that they're trying to set up in this country, it's not just business, it's personal.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm coming from.
It's in your blood, it's in your DNA. It's amazing that you said that because there's two things I wanted to bring up in that regard. You really articulated that well. And I'm glad you sent that email because
Yeah.
you wrote it up well too, Phineas.
Yeah.
And it's important information for people to hear because, well, one, this is more of an aside, and that is, Mussolini's sort of credited for inventing film festivals, you know,
Oh,
and you ever hear that before?
No.
And look it up online. You can see the theories. And the other one is there's a movie on the history of dubbing and subtitling. And he was huge, knowing the power of cinema and what dubbing would do as opposed to subtitling.
Uh,
Because so you can look up that movie on the history of subtitling and listen to the Mussolini part. It is very deep. And Jay Rosenfeld's Rosenblatt's film on all the dictators. You should see that. It's got some Mussolini footage that's amazing in it. But
okay.
here's the main thing that you brought up.
Yeah.
You know that Hitler kind of invented speed, and all the kids in San Diego whose parents invented or propagate the war machine in America,
Right.
they all become speed freaks. And you
Yeah.
wonder if there is something funneling down. And I can give you a bit
And
even.
Trump takes Adderall too,
Does he? I did
supposedly.
I didn't know that. And here's
Or-
the other one that's closer to us in the Zappa world. Bruce Bickford, who did the clay animation for
Right.
Frank. Have you
Right.
seen his documentaries, Monster Road? And
No.
there's a couple documentaries on Bruce Bickford. He's a very intense uh,
I saw
personality.
him in
And
Baby Snakes. I saw him in that.
he's a very powerful artist, and Frank recognized that. And bless his soul, Bruce's dad is in Monster Road. Watch that documentary, and he built the war. Helped build the war machine. Whatever. San Diego and Seattle have these companies there based. And Bruce was obsessed with Vikings from the Mike Douglas, no, yeah, Kurt Douglas film, The Vikings. He
Oh.
he's obsessed with that. And if you watch Bruce's animation, it's always fucking guys chopping heads off and blood squirting everywhere. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh my God, so this is an amazing thing that people wouldn't necessarily think that would funnel down into your DNA somehow.
Yeah.
you know
Was he descended from Vikings, Bruce? Was
was
he
he what?
some? Was he descended? Was he in that lineage from for Vikings? Some people have that
No,
northern.
I don't know so much as descendant, but it something about maybe his dad working in that industry.
Okay.
And then he becomes obsessed with the Vikings movie. It's sort of like how nature nurture what defines who you are. You
Right.
know, like you're trying to figure out why are you like you people say you're obsessed with Trump. Well,
Right.
everybody's obsessed with Trump. I mean,
Right.
that's
Especially Trump.
just fucking turn it off and no one say his name or say anything about him again for the rest of our lives. It
Right.
ain't gonna happen. He won. Sorry, he won. Whatever happens to him, it doesn't matter if he goes to jail and rots, or does the Jeffrey Epstein or whatever.
Well, right.
you know,
He keeps trying to get into power. That's the problem. If he was just a guy, no one would really care about him. But he keeps trying to get the reins of power. If he would just have a Netflix series called The Worst Wing or something where he just plays the president, he'd get billions of dollars and people supporting that. Everyone would binge watch it. It would be great, but no, he wants to be the real thing.
yeah.
He's
And,
gonna fail.
and again, the real thing, that's like Buñuel saying,
Right.
I'm for anyone who seeks the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it. You know,
Well,
you know,
they say it's true that the president is the top guy, but they were getting ready to arrest Nixon. That was why he resigned. Who's the they? Who's the they? That's my question. So
who's
there's got to,
they?
yeah.
Exactly.
So there's got to be some force beyond the president that they answer to.
Oh yeah. Well,
So,
yeah.
and I can't imagine Trump being ever given a security clearance ever again.
Yeah.
It can't happen. It just
Yeah.
somehow not legitimately.
It can happen here. So
Yeah.
Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
She tried. She tried evangelical Christian, and it didn't take because the stories were ridiculous. You know, they were. She sent me to something called Vacation Bible School, which was sort of like Jesus Camp. You ever see that movie Jesus Camp?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So I mean, at one point they're trying to tell me that the little crackers and the Welch's grapefruit juice is. I can see the boxes next to the garbage, and they're trying to tell me that this. I'm trying to figure out why the snacks are so small that day, but they're trying to like tie it in with communion and tell. This is really the. They're trying to say that it's really the blood and the body of the God man
Yeah.
who sacrificed himself thousands of years ago to take off the curse of the talking snake because somebody ate an apple. You know, I mean, I've taken a lot of drugs in my life, but I've never been so fucked up as to come up like with something like that.
Do you
So,
pray?
I, only when I can't find my car keys.
That's the second time that I got one of those. I asked an artist a couple weeks ago, "Do you pray?" And she goes, "Yeah, for parking places." Okay, if God does exist, Phineas, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Uh, Good job. That's all. Just good
Yeah.
job.
Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
I think evil people exist, but whether they are completely evil might be the stuff of fairy tales. They like to make them completely irredeemable in those cases. I think there's always a little bit of good. And now nature gets bored and every so often makes a white buffalo or a calf with three heads. So there might be some people who are completely good or completely evil at some point, but I think some people can be called evil, but I don't know if completely evil people exist.
You know, the hidden question, Phineas, is really how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurai. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. It's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Well, yeah, I would agree with that. I think the best way sometimes is just to play stupid. Just pretend that
Well,
you're pretend that you're dumb.
yeah,
If someone does something offensive to you and you really think that getting mixed up with them is more trouble than it's worth, it's really useful to just pretend like you don't even know what they're talking about.
yeah.
That might be the best way a lot of the time. Just play dumb. I do that. I do that sometimes.
That's actually good. I don't get that answer very often. That's actually a good answer. So there's a Nassim Talib quote. Games were created to give non heroes the illusion of winning. In
Yeah.
real life, we don't know who really wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. Then my friend said, well, villains don't think they're bad, they want control. Heroes want freedom. And Gregory Bateson said, if the criminal gets caught, does he go, oh, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff? Or does he go, wow, I did something morally and socially wrong? So again, it's a lot of prompts, but the basic question is,
Yeah.
does punishment work?
Well, if a person's really just a bad person, I had this problem where this guy was stalking me online for 9 years, and he was doing this to a lot of people, and it was taking trolling and harassment to the next level. And this guy, now was this guy evil? This guy, eventually the FBI got involved because this guy was sending bullets to people. And then the FBI goes, well, this is now we're getting into junior Unabomber territory. He's sending like gunpowder capsules to people as a threat. This guy wound up in Lomblock prison for 18 months. I testified at his trial as a victim impact statement. And I did that because it was hard to do, but I did it because I didn't want them to think that nobody cared.
Right.
He was harassing gay men, and I was about the only person who showed up for that reason. And I didn't want him to get off with probation because I wanted him to feel the pain that he had caused others. Not because it would necessarily turn him into a good person, but even if he was a psychopath, that's the only thing that psychopaths understand is their own pain.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that deters them. It's not other people's pain. It's not me being kept up at night because someone outside doesn't have a blanket. They don't care about that. It's their own pain. Trump's only freaking out right now because of the prospect of his own consequences. But
Is killing.
will it turn him into a good person? I doubt it. But
Yeah.
you know, that's all they understand is their own pain.
Yeah. Is killing, if ever, justified?
I think it's justified if they're certainly most people would agree if it's in self-defense, but beyond that, they would have to let the courts figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah, that's a question I'm just struggled with.
and are you preventing other people from dying? Are you killing a serial killer because they might get out and start killing more people, which has happened, you know, that sort of
Yeah.
thing. That's a question.
Yeah.
Or are they taking up resources, that sort of thing? I don't know. It's like Frank was saying to me. Now you're getting into a constitutional area.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I've asked people, if you had a vote, are you for or against capital punishment?
Yeah, I'd say mostly against, but there could be some exceptions.
Yeah.
I would like there to be like a classification in the legal world of a state of extreme certainty, not just unreasonable doubt, but extraordinary certainty, like a video. Or but now with AI, that's starting to get weird. That's
Yeah.
starting to get gray. Or if the person admits it, but then they might be admitting to something they didn't do. So
Yeah, well, we can end this part one on an abstract question that addresses that. Extreme certainty almost sounds like an oxymoron. but
yeah,
but you know, um uh this whole thing, capital punishment, one of my best teachers said, well, we should have a thing on your driver's license, and it says, if you're for capital punishment and you're convicted, then they can kill you. If you're against capital punishment and you're convicted, they can't kill you. That seems sort of logically correct.
who's going to be killing you for what reason?
Well, they
Just
like you got busted for killing someone, or you got busted for doing something that they're gonna kill you.
but
That
then
that
you can change your mind though. You can change your mind. So then do you have to
right.
change
Well,
it? Yeah.
that's the whole thing about your deathbed, you know. Well, my brother told me, or my sister or my mom told me that everything comes to me, and then in the week before she dies, they go, no, I changed it, and they go, no, she was under stress. So I mean, it comes down to this question, Phineas: is perception reality?
Well, no. I mean, we're always what we perceive is necessarily not real because it's through the filter of our own senses. And so there's no such thing as unfiltered perception. We're
Yeah.
always getting some version of it. What is reality? I know this moment is really happening between you and me.
Yeah.
This moment is always happening. Whether it's a dream is another question, but the dream is happening. That's about that's the most extreme level of certainty I can get to, actually, is just this moment.
Yeah. Be here now. Live for the moment. I agree. Wyndham Lewis nailed it. He says, live in the present and write a detailed history of the future. Be here
Yeah,
now. And
yeah,
that's Zappa and Joyce both said. Well, that's not Don Joyce, but James Joyce.
yeah,
The same breed, I would imagine.
yeah,
James Joyce and Frank Zappa both said all times are happening now, all at onceness.
yeah, yeah. I've
It's
heard that. Yeah,
it's pretty amazing.
that freaks me out a little bit because there are things in the past that I'm a little freaked out about them still happening.
Yeah, yeah. It-
I like some stuff to be over,
yeah,
but I get it, I get it. If time is like a three-dimensional thing, there's
yeah,
like it's just over that hill, still going on.
yeah. It's freak me out, Phineas. Freak me out. you know, uh, Lily Tomlin said reality's just a collective hunch.
Yeah, consensus reality. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
just well, we all kind of agree. It's just like words. T.S. Eliot said, "When I talk to you, I got to use words." He goes, "Well, no, you don't. We could do this whole thing with gesture, or printed word, or uh, dancing or whistling. But
yeah,
we're addicted." McLuhan said, "Word is the most addicting and universal drug."
yeah,
But it doesn't mean words work. They work pretty good, but they don't always work.
yeah, yeah. Some people are mute. Some people don't have the ability to use words. There
Yeah.
are people in extreme situations. There's the people on that island, who haven't had any contact with the rest of humanity for thousands of generations, and they kill everybody who tries to approach them. Have you heard about them?
No.
And yeah, there's an indigenous tribe of people who live on an island somewhere. I don't know if it's in Indonesia. Everybody who tries to land on the island, they immediately kill. And I thought during COVID, those are the only people who don't have to worry about COVID. Never heard of it, never had any problems with COVID. The only people on the planet. And so, in a way, they were right, to stay away
They were
from.
right, but it
Yeah,
sounds like Zappa going, "Who's pluking the monkeys?" Like if we got AIDS from monkeys, who fucked the monkeys? Like
yeah.
somehow COVID could leak over there through some, you know,
Maybe
weird
some kind of weird, I don't know how it would get there. It just, something drops from an airplane or
or a
something.
mosquito or whatever.
Something, yeah.
Yeah.
They probably got weird. That's probably, they were saying we probably should leave them alone anyway, because they might have diseases that would fuck
They
us up.
that's it.
They got weird things going on too.
Yeah. Well, this has been truly enlightening, Phineas. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to part two and stay in touch. And, you know, uh, people should visit your channel. What's your channel called
Well,
again?
I think it's nationalcynical.com. They can go there. All the old shows are mostly parked there under the archives link. But if you want to keep up with what the National Cynical Network, which is what my creative project is called, the best way to do that is to go to Patreon, patreon.com/national cynical. And national cynical is all one word. Patreon.com/national cynical. And you can sign up as a Patreon if you want, but you don't have to. Just follow the blog there. And that everything I'm doing online creatively is announced through there. So,
Good. And your George Carlin, we'll get into George and Frank, but
yeah,
your George Carlin tape is on YouTube under National Cynical channel.
That phone call is at nationalcynical.bandcamp.com. If you look for the album called Bomb Scare and you go down to the last track on Bomb Scare, you will hear the voicemail from George.
How cool is that?
And if you go to one called They Saved Zappa's Mustache, which I did with Don Joyce, and go, I think, to the last one, you'll hear me talking to Frank on KPFA. And we
When
talked.
when Frank took phone calls, or was he at the station?
No, he was being interviewed on the station. He was announcing he was thinking of running for president at the time, and so
And
he was.
he took calls.
Yeah, they were taking calls. I was the last one in. I just got in right under the wire. So a friend of mine at the time was saying he was in New York at a cafe and heard me talking to Frank playing over a NPR station. They were rerunning it. So, oh, that's Phineas talking to Frank. He's sitting in a cafe in Greenwich Village or something.
How cool
So
is that?
yeah, we talked about Bob and some genius, got some laughs.
Yeah.
It was cool. I would have told him. I think back to it in my mind. I would have told him that he has this song called Tango na Minchia Tanta,
Yeah.
which my dad, being Italian, he used to laugh so hard at that song. It's all in Italian, but he really got that song. He really
It's
thought
great.
that. He just thought that was so. I wish I could have told Frank that my dad thought that was funny. He would have got a kick out of that.
He would have loved that. That is a great
That,
song.
that he reached that demographic, even
He
if it was
that's
one guy.
Yeah, that's the phenomenon of Frank. When I was in Flint, Michigan in the late 60s, when Frank's coming out, early 70s, the rock and roll wasn't like it is now. Your parents didn't like rock and roll. Parents never liked rock and roll when it was first breaking. Now you like your take your kids to a Foo Fighter concert. It's like, give me a fucking break. That's not what rock and roll is. But back then there was a friend of ours whose parents liked the Mothers of Invention, and we were like, what? Because they were playing like Tin Pan Alley, Winchester Cathedral music in between rock, and they were playing all different genres, and it
Yeah.
was like Zappa's someone parents like.
What I learned about that show, doing that show with Don Joyce, is that you really can't remix Frank's stuff. You can only remix him with Frank. It's
Oh
like
yeah.
it's like a genre unto itself.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you can't remix Frank. That's a great statement. You can't do fucking covers of
You
Frank.
can you can remix Frank, but it has to be with Frank.
Yeah. Well, that's the
But
Charlie Parker.
but Matt Groening bought that show for me.
Yeah.
He bought that show.
Yeah, he
I
should.
still have his Simpsons business card in my wallet.
That's good. But that's Charlie Parker. He quoted it, you quote the Great American Songbook when you're a jazz guy. And then Charlie Parker would also quote himself.
That's cool.
All right, Phineas. Thanks again. I look forward to
Okay.
part 2. Thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent
Definitely.
time. Really cool.
I got the camera now. This is the first time I've ever done any kind of webcam thing, and it went perfectly, I think.
Went perfect. Sound, everything was great. I'll see you soon. Thanks again.
Take care.
Even though I'm hitting the end broadcast button, I hope it never ends and we can keep talking forever and ever.
And I just want to say my hair is getting really good in the back.